Yo gamers, it's your boy Glitched, back at it again with another banger tutorial. I'm going to be showing you guys how to use the newly created cutscene skip patch for Kingdom Hearts 1 English, 1 Japanese, and 1 Final Mix for the PlayStation 2. This patch was created by sh2_luck and applies only to the PlayStation 2 versions of Kingdom Hearts 1. This patch works for both console and emulator, so I'll be going over the process for installation for each method of play, starting with console first. So before we start, I'll go over what exactly you need to play this patch on console. You'll need 3 things: a USB drive. I personally have a 32GB USB drive that's formatted in FAT32, as that's what works best with PlayStation 2. Not all USB drives will give you the option to format in FAT32, especially if they're larger than 32GB, but I can provide you with a program that allows you to format it in FAT32 anyways, and I'll put that in the description. You need the patch files that allow you to boot the patch from your disk or OPL using the Launch ELF homebrew software. And lastly, you'll need a way to access the Launch ELF homebrew software itself. You can use a memory card preloaded with FreeMcBoot if your PlayStation 2 has a model number from 10,000 through 79,000, so this is any fat PS2 and most of the slim PS2s. Or you would have to use a memory card preloaded with Fortuna or Funtuna for the 90,000 model slim PlayStation 2s. You can also use a DVD-R disc with free DVD boot burned onto it, which boots you straight into Launch ELF. But I recommend getting a FreeMcBoot or Fortuna memory card if you don't have any of these things already, as it is the easiest way to get into Launch ELF, and you can find them really cheap on Amazon and eBay. You can check what PS2 version you have by pressing triangle when on the BIOS menu. Your model number will show up next to where it says console. You can also check for your model number by looking at the sticker on the back of the console if you have a fat PS2, or underneath the console if you have a slim PS2. If you have a 90,000 model, you need a memory card with Fortuna or Funtuna installed, which are essentially the same thing as FreeMcBoot. 90,000 models are not compatible with the same FreeMcBoot that's used for 70,000 models and prior, because the 90,000 models are on a newer firmware version that FreeMcBoot is not compatible with. So Fortuna and Funtuna were developed to be used for this firmware instead. They basically serve the exact same purpose in getting you into ULaunch ELF, which is the main homebrew application for the PlayStation 2, and is also what we need to use to actually make this patch applicable. Now that you're aware of what you need, I'll be explaining the 2 different ways to play the patch on console. The first method will be through the traditional use of the disk to boot the game through the .elf patch file. And the second method I'll be covering is through OPL, otherwise known as Open PS2 Loader, which is a homebrew software that you can use to play games through a hard drive that is connected to the fat PS2's hard drive expansion bay. Most of you will likely be using the traditional disk method, but for those of you who don't have access to the game disks physically, or prefer the improved loading times of OPL and maybe already have an OPL setup, the option is available and I will go over installation instructions for it. So with everything clarified, I'll go ahead with the console installation instructions, beginning with the traditional disk method. So assuming that you do have everything you need, let's go ahead and get started with the installation process. So first, start by plugging your USB stick into your computer. And once it is plugged in, I personally make sure that my USB is formatted and clean if this is the first time I'm using it for the PlayStation 2. As you can see, I already have all of my stuff set up on this. I've been using it from a PS2 for a while. But if this is your first time using this USB drive for PS2 and PS2 homebrew stuff, you want to right-click it down here and click Format. And from this Format menu, if you have FAT32 as an available file system, definitely select that. It's just a little bit easier to work with on PS2. And check the box for Quick Format. But before you go ahead and hit start, just make sure that if this is a USB you had lying around somewhere that you use for other things, that there are no important files left over on this USB, because as soon as you hit start, it's going to wipe the USB clean. So just make sure that you have everything off of it if there is anything important that you'd like to save. Then you just go ahead and hit start, and you'll wipe your drive here. If you were able to format your drive to FAT32 successfully following those instructions, you can skip this next section. But if Windows didn't give you the option to format to FAT32 normally, follow these instructions instead. If your USB drive didn't give you the option to format to FAT32 normally, as I just showed you prior, you can use the program GUIFormat to format it to FAT32 anyways. If you end up having to use this program, it's just as simple. All you have to do is make sure that you double-click and open the program itself, look for your actual flash drive within the drive drop-down, and you want to make absolutely sure that you're picking the correct drive here because you don't want to wipe your Windows drive or your actual storage drives or anything like that, only your flash drive itself. So it will show you most of the time next to the proper drive, 30 gigabyte FAT32 flash drive. I've already formatted it, so it's going to show as that. But if you're unsure, you can always look on the side here and see what letter is assigned to your flash drive compared to your other storage devices. So make sure you select your actual flash drive, change the allocation size to 16384, and then you can rename it if you want to. It doesn't really matter, but once you hit start here, it will format it to FAT32. Sometimes even after doing this, the PS2 can't read the USB drive, and this is normally because the USB drive is in a GPT partition instead of an MBR partition. So this is quite complicated, and it would just be a lot to explain that, but you could understand it usually with a quick Google search. If you still run into issues with your PS2 not picking up your USB drive, you need to search how to convert it to MBR partition. So with our USB formatted and ready to go, the next step is to download the patch files and put them on our USB drive. So the patch files can be found on the GitHub page for the patch, as well as on the resources tab of the original Kingdom Hearts 1 leaderboard, shown here, and the Kingdom Hearts Final Mix leaderboard, also in the patch section of resources, shown here. All of the download links, regardless of where you get them from, are going to point directly to the GitHub links download anyway, so I'll go ahead and download them from the GitHub page. I'll also put this link in the description so you guys can conveniently access it, but you just want to go ahead and download right here where it says khskip.ps2.zip. Just go ahead and click that to download it, and once that's done downloading, you're going to want to open up the zip file in a file extracting software of some kind. I use 7-zip, but you can use WinRAR or just Windows. Whatever you have that can open and extract zip files will work, so go ahead and open it up in one of those programs, and once you have it open, you're going to want to extract the file to a place that you'll be able to easily access it. So I have a KH1 cutscene skip folder. I'll just go ahead and drag and drop it in to extract it here. Now once it's extracted, just go ahead and open up the KH skip PS2 folder, and you'll see a couple different things here. The IMG folder here is only for OPL, so you can ignore that. I'll touch up on how to install for OPL later. For right now, we're focusing on how to boot the patch with disk and console. So to do that, you just want to go ahead and copy the khskip.elf file and paste it directly onto your USB drive. And once you've done that, it's pretty much ready to go. Now you can remove your USB drive from your PC and plug it into your PS2 along with your FreeMcBoot or Fortuna memory card. Alright, so once you have the USB drive and homebrew memory card in your PS2, you want to get into the Launch ELF homebrew software. I have a 90,000 model PS2, so I have to use a Fortuna memory card. With Fortuna, you have to enter and exit the memory card through the PS2 file browser to get into the software. If you have FreeMcBoot though, you'll likely be automatically booted into a FreeMcBoot specific menu, and from there you can select Launch ELF from the menu options. Once you're in the Launch ELF program, press circle to enter the file browser. Go down to the mass folder, which is actually your USB drive, and hit circle to open it. Locate the khskip.elf file, which will have a green icon next to it, and press circle to launch it. You'll be met with a pure yellow screen. This screen is just a standby screen, which indicates that the ELF file or the patch is waiting for your disk to be detected. This program can detect and apply the patches for all three versions of the game: English, Japanese, or Final Mix. So as long as one of these discs are in the disk tray at this point and the disk tray is closed ready to read the disk, the yellow screen will eventually disappear and you'll be booted straight into the game with the cutscene skip patches applied. This concludes the instructions for running the patch on disk versions of the game, so I'll briefly go over the installation instructions for running the game on HDD through OPL. In order to make this patch work with OPL, you have to download a custom version of the OPL launcher with code inject. SH2 Luck has provided a download to this version on GitHub, and I'll link it in the description so you guys can access it easy as well. Click on open ps2ld.elf here to start the download, and once the download is finished, you want to put this file somewhere that you can launch it on your PS2. For me, I only have a USB drive rather than the OPL HDD setup, so I'll be putting it directly on my USB. So I'm just going to right click and copy the ELF and go to my USB root and paste it here. As you can see, I've already pasted it. You can put it on your USB drive, your memory card, the HDD itself. Anywhere you put it, you just want to make sure it's somewhere you can boot it from Launch Elf. And the next thing we need is the KHskip files as well, and these are the same files that you would download for console and emulator, so we'll go ahead and grab those next. We'll be downloading the files from the link in the description next to patch files, which will take you to the GitHub page for the patch. So download the khskip ps2.zip file here, and once you have it downloaded, go ahead and open it up and extract it to a place that you'll be able to easily access it. Once again, I'll be dragging and dropping it into my KH1 cutscene skip folder, so you can just extract it wherever you'd like. Once you have KHskip extracted, you want to open it up and find the IMG folder inside of it. So you want to right click and copy that IMG folder. Locate the directory that holds your DVD folder for OPL, which is where your ISO files are stored for booting in OPL. In my case, once again, it's going to be on the root of my USB. This is where my DVD folder is, and you can see there's also an IMG folder present as well. You want to make sure that you have the ISOs for the version of Kingdom Hearts that you're going to be using the patch with located inside of your DVD folder for OPL. And once that is the case, you just want to go ahead and paste the IMG folder onto the same directory that the DVD folder is located in. So since I already have the IMG folder here, it'll ask to replace the files. I'm going to replace them. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace the files, and now you'll see that these 3 IMG files will be inside of the IMG folder. Now that I have the new custom version of OPL downloaded and the IMG folder pasted into the same directory as the DVD folder, which holds the ISOs for Kingdom Hearts for my OPL, I'm going to boot my console and enter launch ELF to boot OPL. Once I've made my way into Launch ELF, I'm going to press circle to enter the file browser and find where I put open ps2ld.elf. Once again, in my case, it's going to be on the USB. For you, you could have put it on a USB, your HDD directly. Wherever it is, just go ahead and find it and boot it. Once it has booted, you're going to be met with the settings menu, so go ahead and select X on settings. If you're using an HDD, change the HDD device start mode to manual. For me, I'm using a USB, so I have to change the BDM start mode to manual, but for HDD users, change this option here to manual. So for me, just to make it accessible, I have to do BDM. Then I go ahead and press circle and circle again to boot into my games list. Now, once in the game list, you're going to want to select HDD from the bottom options here. For me, again, it's going to show as BDM, but once you have HDD selected, just hit X to start device. And it should show you where your HDD is housing the games that are in your DVD folder. So from there, you should see your games on the top left under the game list. As you can see, KH1 shows up for me. On whichever game that you're going to be playing, so if this is Japanese, English, or Final Mix, you want to highlight the game on the game list, press triangle to enter the options, go down to cheat settings and hit X, and for the image linker, you want to turn this on. This allows the game to be patched from the files that you put in that IMG directory earlier. You could keep PS2 RD cheat engine off since it's not needed, but you would just hit OK. The last thing you'll have to do is disable IGR, which is in game settings. So go up to game settings, go to mode 6 down here and select X to turn it on. Turning it on disables IGR, which makes it to where the soft reset button combination will restart the entire console instead of just soft resetting Kingdom Hearts. So to avoid the soft reset issues, turn on mode 6 to disable IGR. Once all of these options are in place, press circle to go back to your games list and press X to boot your game. And lastly, I'm going to show the process for playing the patch on Emulator. We're going to be using the same files that we downloaded for PS2 console and PS2 OPL. We'll make use of these files with the PCSX2 emulator. You can find this on PCSX2.net under the latest nightly tab here. It'll give you the download links for Windows, Linux, or Mac. I don't have the means to test Linux or Mac, but I assume it should be just as good. But if you have Windows, of course, download the Windows version. This is what this tutorial will be covering. So once you have this downloaded, just make sure you extract or install it into a place that you can easily find. Once you have your PCSX2 emulator set up and ready, click on the download link for the patch files in the description, and you'll be taken to the GitHub page that houses the patch files. Click on kskip.ps2.zip here to download them. And once downloaded, locate them and open them up to extract them. Make sure you extract them to a place that you'll be able to easily access, since you'll be using them to boot into the patched version of the game through the emulator. I extract them onto my KH1 cutscene skip folder here. So once extracted, you can open them up and see that you have a file khskip.elf. So this will be the file that you'll be using to apply the patch to your ISO files to play on emulator. Open up your emulator, and to open up the ELF file that you just downloaded, click on System, Start File, and find where you extracted your khskip folder to, and select the khskip.elf file. So this will start the ELF file within the emulator, and it will show as a black screen until you select the proper disk to go with the ELF file. So whichever version of the game you have and want to play, whether that be the English version, the Japanese version, or Final Mix, you want to go into System, change disk, and if you select from File, you just have to find the location of the ISO file for any of those Kingdom Hearts versions. But since I have my ISOs on my game list here, I can click Change Disk from Game List and select Kingdom Hearts English. It'll say disk changed to Kingdom Hearts, memory card reinserted, and give it a bit of time and it will boot straight into the game. You can hold down Tab or whatever your speed up button is on emulator to cause the boot to happen faster. And now that the game is booted, you know that it works. So now that I've shown you how to install the patch onto console and emulator through different methods, I'll demonstrate how the patch works to skip cutscenes, and I'll show off the additional practice features that were included in the patch as well. An easy way to tell that the patch has worked is by pressing Select on the title screen menu here. At the top left of the screen, you'll see two different toggles, Skip Auto and Skip Manual. Skip Manual is what it's on by default, and this means that you can skip cutscenes by pressing or holding triangle. And Skip Auto just means that cutscenes will skip automatically, with the exception of full motion video cutscenes, meaning the hyper-detailed animated scenes like the intro and the credits sequence. So, just to demonstrate how this works exactly, I'll go ahead and do Skip Auto, and I'll load a save file that's right before a cutscene just to demonstrate how the cutscene skip looks and actually functions before going into the additional features that are part of the patch. So this save file that I'm loading starts in the treasure room right before the Jafar boss fight, which normally has a pretty lengthy minute and a half or so cutscene before the fight starts. So I'll go ahead and enter the loading zone here to demonstrate that the cutscene will be skipped automatically. You may see some of the cutscenes fade in just a little bit before they're skipped, but normally after the skip you'll hear a sound effect followed by the now loading symbol in the bottom right indicating the skip is in progress. Then you load straight into the fight like normal. So this will pretty much be the way that the cutscene skip works for all of the original versions. Final Mix is slightly different in that you may have to use the start menu skip like you would if you would have died prior. But there are some other features that I'd like to go over with the patch as well. So let's say you mess up the fight, just like I did here, and you're in practice and you want to go ahead and try that again. So the patch actually has an instant continue feature that has a button combination to force a continue as if you would have died. So all you have to do is press R1, R2, and left on the D-pad at the same time, and it will instantly continue from the last checkpoint. So I should be back in the treasure room once doing the instant continue feature. and I can go ahead and retry the fight once again. So this is very helpful for practice. It saves a lot of time over soft resetting or hard resetting the console. And you can do this pretty much anywhere in the game without any issues. It'll just put you right back to the last checkpoint like it would if you would have died in the fight and hit continue. Next feature included in the patch is the Save Anywhere feature. So this part of the patch allows you to open up the save menu anywhere you want. So it helps a lot with creating saves that are more convenient to access in places that are right next to a boss fight or right next to a segment that you need to practice specifically. Normally you can only save at specified save locations within Kingdom Hearts, but with this code you can pull that save menu up from the save spots literally anywhere. I will recommend not saving in places that give you a red command menu, which are normally places where enemies have spawned, because sometimes it can cause issues and maybe even cause a soft lock. But if you're in an area like this, where, let's say you want to practice the community climb, getting all the way up to the Oogie playroom, all you have to do is press L2, L1, and left on the D-pad at the same time, and it pulls up the save menu. You can also exit the world from this menu if you'd like, but for my sake here, I can go ahead and make a save right outside of Oogie's Manor to practice community climb. So with this save made, I'll go ahead and soft reset. I'll load the save that I just made to show that the Save Anywhere code is working. And as you can see, the save loads in the exact position that I created it in. So that's pretty much the gist of the cutscene skip patch and the added practice features of Save Anywhere and Instant Continue. As for the speedrun rule set, these features, Instant Continue and Save Anywhere, are not allowed to be used as part of the speedrun, but they're amazing practice tools for getting better at certain segments and playing on console without the input delay of Emulator like we used to have to do with save states. So that wraps up the demonstration and the tutorial as a whole. Hope you guys have fun with the cutscene skip patch. Massive thanks to SH2 Luck for making this patch playable for us and putting in so much work to optimize it, refine it, and fix any bugs that it had. Thank you guys for watching.